Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, let me just check how many people we have connected. I see we have 90. So we can proceed because we have quite a busy schedule, and I just have some introductory information to give so others can join as we progress. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, you're very welcome to day 2 of this EENA event, Next Generation 112, From Theory to Reality. My name is Freddie McBride, and I'm the EENA Director of Digital Communications Policy and Regulation. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to introduce you to my colleagues and co-moderators, Cristina Lumbreras, who you will have remembered from yesterday, she moderated yesterday's session, and Cristina is our Technical Director. And tomorrow's session will be moderated by our Public Affairs Manager, Benoit Vivier. Okay, so this is an overview of the program for the 3-day event. Some of you may be joining for the first time today, but the presentation is entitled NG112 From Theory to Reality. So yesterday we started with the theory, and we looked at the theoretical aspects related to 112, from the whole concept development to the standardization work. Yes, we started with the concept, the theoretical concept yesterday, and we are now today moving very much into the realm of the reality. We will look today at implementation projects that have happened both in Europe and in the USA. So our objectives for today's event is to look at these implementation projects, to learn from the experiences, and to apply those learnings to future NG projects, particularly in Europe. So I'm very delighted to announce a distinguished lineup of speakers. First up today, we will have Michel Montere, who is Director of the Digital Agency for Civil Protection, which is part of the Ministry of the Interior in France. That'll be followed by Sarin Vasilka, who is Deputy Director of the Special Telecommunications Service, STS, in Romania. We'll then have a coffee break, and good afternoon, Sarin and Daniel.
Hello.
Then in the afternoon, we will have presentations from William Ewell, who is the Director of the Office of Statewide Emergency Telecommunications in Connecticut. And last but not least, we'll have a presentation from Budge Courier, who is the 911 Emergency Communication Branch Manager at the Governor's Office of Emergency Services in California. And we're delighted to have Bud joining us at a very ungodly hour this morning on the West Coast of the United States. So before we proceed with the presentations, just to remind you of some of the practicalities of the event. This event is being recorded, just to inform you all of that. Today we have, as I mentioned, 4 speakers. Each presentation will be around 20 minutes in length, with a 5-minute window for questions after each presentation. I would kindly ask you, those of you who have questions, to please post them in the chat window, along with your name and the organization you represent. We will then aggregate the questions and put them to the speakers after each of their respective presentations. Any questions we can't get to, we would encourage you to use the contact details on the speaker's presentation slide decks and follow up with them directly. Also to remind that the GoToWebinar link that you use to join today's session is valid for the 3 days of the event, so keep it safe until tomorrow. And on Monday, next Monday, the 3rd of May, we will issue our post-event email. This will contain information on the proceedings that took place at the event. The event recording will be available at the event webpage on our website and also on EENA's YouTube channel. And as I mentioned, you can get in touch with the presenters if you wish to speak with them directly regarding any questions that were unanswered during the live event. So without further ado, I think I will hand over to our first speaker of the day. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to give a big welcome to Michel Montere, Director of the Digital Agency for Civil Protection, part of the Ministry of the Interior in France. And Michel is going to talk about the Nexus project. So Michel, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Freddie. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be here with the EENA, which is a small association, but which is an accelerator of transformation in the emergency sector, in the emergency field, really some kind of tech for rescue community, and which has helped us quite a lot already on the advanced mobile location, for example, and now on the EasyNet. So in this presentation, I will brief you with the next point, the general overview of the Nexus 18112 project in France. Why 18? Because it is the emergency number for firemen in France. I will focus on the implementation model, on the expected benefits of the EasyNet, because we have a particular way to implement the EasyNet, and I will explain why, and the next steps for Nexus 18112. So a few words of introduction. The agency now has been created 2.5 years ago, and at the beginning of the creation of the agency, I was a senior civil servant of the Ministry of the Interior. I have conducted some major IT projects in several ministries, and I haven't at this time. I wasn't very familiar with the concept of EasyNet, and so what I saw at the time being is that it was another tender, another big market, another source of risk of really in my dashboard of risk management. It was a big thing, very important to manage. And so why is the use of this? And now I'm convinced that without the EasyNet, without all the work of on that kind of networks, the Nexus system won't be able to work. What is the Nexus concept? So I'm going to present it. The current situation in France, so you know that France is divided in roughly 100 administrative districts, which are named départements. And the department, the district are competent to implement fire and rescue services. And these departments are independent in the procurement of the IT solutions and IT alert management system. So as a result, you have 100 IT system different 100 different IT systems which don't communicate between them, and worst of all, which have not taken the full advantage of the digital revolution. It means that there isn't gathering of data, only on a small district base, and there is no national exploitation of data, which is damageful for predicting issue, for instance. The procurement system has shown also its limits in terms of cost effectiveness. We have reckoned that we can go from 600 million euros for the last 10 years to 200 million euros in the next 10 years because of mutualization. And last but not least, the local technical environments are very fragile. There is a culture of resilience among firemen. So when I'm saying that it is fragile, it is not about the infrastructure, it is not about hosting, but it is rather about cybersecurity issues. Some of my districts don't have a single LDAP system, for example, so it's very difficult to isolate people who have made any mistake on the information system. So it is a pity. And I've forgotten to say about one of the main issue is that in France, you know that we have an organization which is designed currently, because the President of the Republic has launched a big overhaul on this issue. But you know that in France we have 13 emergency numbers, and the handling of 112, 112 is made mostly by firemen, in some case by the health ministry, and there is still distinct numbers for police and military police in the fields. So these different businesses have to communicate together, and given that they communicate solely on telephonic basis, it is not as efficient as it could be. So the Nexus system aims to change all this with one single database with a multi-tenant, that's what I will explain, systems that will allow everybody to share the best of technology. All the FRS will benefit from the best of technology in decreasing their expenses, and the national technical environment will allow for more security. And Nexus will enable interoperability with other services, because by design we will implement the new EDXL or EMSI language that will name the things, name the business with a common language, which is the main source of dysfunctioning in interoperability. So how we will implement this? With an EasyNet, that is on the left on the chart. I will focus on the right. Nexus is the system of systems. It means that you have an SGA, so the French acronym, Alert Management System, SGO, Operation Management System, which is a dispatch system, a computer-assisted dispatch, and an information, communication, and control systems, which monitors the assets that are engaged on the field. The exchange management system to communicate with our colleagues from National Police, Gendarmerie Nationale, and the Health Ministry. And we have also a geographic information system, because we will see that our system, by the screenshot I will present you at the end, is a very cartocentric system. And on the left, you have the emergency services network, which is called Secourir. Alors, Secourir is the French acronym. So there is an usual rule that you can go from the English acronym to the French acronym by reversing the spelling of the name. And it is quite correct this time, because Secourir means resilient, intelligent, reliable, emergency and urgency communication services. And what Nexus is an information system which will monitor firefighter entire activity through a unique nationwide web application. An emergency communication will be processed by a single nationwide network that lead all the networks. So what is the implementation of the Nexus system, of the Secourir, of the PSAPs? Let me present you with 3 charts, 3 very simple charts. I hope I won't be too caricatural or too schematic, but it is just to make you well understand where our architectural choices. At the left, there is the French current operating mode. There is zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. It means that department 1, department 2, department 3, and each has its own way of connecting to the phone network, and it works basically with classic telephony, voice call. Everybody's here know that the voice call networks are operated currently with Internet protocol technology at the heart of the network, but it does not concern the whole network. And you have still in France this implementation, this connection to the network of the operators on a departmental basis, indistinct from one to the other. Generally, the operator connecting the PSAPs to the network is the historical operator. But sometimes it can change, and sometimes it is not very reliable. And the middle of our chart, you have the NG112 model. It means that there is one single network, one common network for gathering all emergency call. And this network will address all the distinct PSAPs of the different zones, which now we will be reliably on a reliant mode connected to the phone calls, to the phone network. Not only the phone network, it is an internet-based protocol communication with all the resiliency that it can bring, and when the multimedia mode, which is now required by the European Code for Electronic Communication. Again, the reverse way of naming acronym in French and English, sorry. And at the right side of the chart, the chart, which is our targeted architecture. So there is different zones where we won't change the administrative division of France, and we expect the department last a long time ago. A common networks with the main components, which are roughly the NG112 model, and the end right of the chart, all the PSAPs. And why are they called virtual PSAPs? But you have to remind that we have one single information system for all PSAPs, and it is a multi-tenant information system. It means that we share the same database, we share the same process, the same IT processes, and so we are able to create virtual PSAP, first of all, on a geographical basis of actual PSAPs, brick and mortar PSAPs, but also we are able to create on-demand and as-a-service virtual PSAPs to manage, for example, a catastrophe which will concern several districts, several departments. This is the main point of Nexus. This is what we call an entraide in France, which means general mutual assistance between PSAPs, between firefighter PSAPs, so that with this system, sharing one sole information system and sharing and accessing to one common networks, one unique networks, one unique NG112 EasyNet, we will able to share the part of work between PSAP which is not too busy and PSAP which are very busy. You see, in France we have a lot of major risk issues with natural catastrophes, for example, and with for example, and also industrial issues with dams, for example. Should the dams will broke, I mean that there will be a flood. Sorry for the image of emergency call coming to the district PSAPs, and it won't be able to manage to handle the surge of calls. So with Nexus, the PSAPs will be able to share the part, to share the job, and to help and to ensure mutual assistance. So how does it work? Next slide. Thank you. This is the overview of implementational model. So I'm sorry, but the chart is in French. We are currently under tender, and to make sure that all the candidates share the same access of information, I have deliberately forbidden all charts that are not in the tender. So this chart is extracted from the tender, and the tender is in French, but I will translate all the main component if you want. So I'm beginning with the step 0 with a row 0. So SBC session border controller. Fortunately, I won't have to translate. Then there is the brique de routage. Brique de routage is the routing function. Then in step, so you know the recurrent, the color at the top of the chart. Step 0 is alerting. Step 1, it comes into the routing function. The routing function answer the alert management system via an API, and the call is enriched with geographical information provider such as advanced mobile location, for example. And step 3, the call is presented to the virtual PSAP. And step 4, one human operator select by picking the call on screen, and so the call is enriched, and to the arrow to the step 2 there is a response in step 5 where the address of the SIP boxes, the local SIP IPBX is named so that the routing function can bring the emergency call to the relevant local SIP IPBX. And this SIP IPBX will, step 7, final step, will bring the phone call to the operator. And so what is the advantage of this? We will see more obviously on screenshot at the end of the presentation. But now you can see that there is an intelligent way of routing by sending the call to the human operator, to the PSAP, which has named itself to manage this call. So it is not only a geographical basis, which is in the NG112, it is an intelligence basis, it is a non-demand basis where I'm able to answer this call. I am in the PSAP, which is not concerned, already concerned by a flu or by an industrial catastrophe. So I have plenty of time to handle this. So to help my colleagues in the next PSAPs and the district beside me, I can see what calls are coming on the screen, and so I can take it, I can handle. And so this is a way of disengaging or of sharing the massive work that will happen in a catastrophe. So next slide, you are seeing it right on the screenshot. First of all, if there is not a catastrophe, you are able to see, I said a few minutes ago, that there is a cartocentric approach in our user experience. So you can see by AML or any location providers, the exact places where takes place the demand, the request for emergency communication. So you can select it. And if you have too much information, before being helped by another PSAPs, you can select yourself. You can see, for example, there are some issue in the part of the district which deal with something which is already dealt about by another operator. So there is not an emergency, and so you can focus on other things. Think that you have. I'm sorry, but I don't find any more talking image. That's one of my product owner, which is a fireman officer, which talked about the box of Smarties. Smarties is a tube containing candies in France, and all of different colors. But if you want to have the red candies, for example, you have to treat all the Smarties inside the box, inside inside the tube. Now you see all the Smarties on the table. You can see all the calls on the tables and you can select, and with no regards for the time of arrival at the IPBX, you can select the right call, assuming you're knowing of the situation. Second benefits, I've already talked about. Virtual PSAP in action. You can, because you have 100 virtual PSAPs, it means that the borders of the PSAPs can change on demand and as a service. And so if I'm in the next district, I'm able to select the phone calls of the other district, which will have difficulties to handle this. And so you can see in Nexus, sharing a common information system. Everybody shares the same database, everybody shares the same events, and so you are able to help everybody. I mean that Nexus is really a way for federating the world civil security community in France, which gathers some 240,000 people with volunteers, firemen, for example, but which are administratively divided. With this system, we will be able to operate everybody and to work as a national community. So Nexus Alert Management can be deployed in any organization. The fact that we deal with virtual PSAPs with a multi-tenant architecture allow us to adapt to any organization. The fact that we have divided in our system of systems the call taking management from the dispatch management means that we can share, for example, with medical emergency services, the alert management system. And Nexus is eligible as a national 112 reception tool because it improves the handling of an emergency communication. It creates tools which is fully adaptable to organization and make sure of the resilience of the alert management system. And is proposing an objective qualification system. It means that we have the CISU, Emergency Services and Interoperability Framework, which works with EDXL and which names the things with the same language. You see, I've been a senior civil servant in territories, a sub-prefect, and when you are handling some kind of major event, it's very difficult to sort between the involved after the firemen, the implicated after the police or something. Everybody has his own engaged. Everybody has his own number of wounded and died. I'm sorry to be caricatural, but sometimes it amounts to this. So with the same language, because the Ministry of the Interior, the Prime Minister, have decided 5 years ago after the massive terrorist attacks that now it's time to speak a common language. By design, we will implement this common language, and it is very useful to work fully with our colleagues. Secourir requires to move away from NG112 exact model. That's what I already explained. Secourir is driven by a single national application. To rapidly deploy Secourir, the choice has been made to get one tender to deliver the network and to collect all emergency communication. Well, so French use case is slightly different from NG112 basement, and the chosen implementation is not yet standardized. There was also another thing I would like to say that as we have seen, we have chosen to outsource the whole Secourir, the whole is net, because our internal offer isn't quite mature enough so far, and we want to have one moral person responsible for the whole process. It's a case of responsibility as managing director. I don't want to deal with one contractor for the network, one contractor for the intelligent routing. It will be too difficult and too risky. And again, we have outsourced this, and also the tender has been prepared by a request for information 2 years ago by an experiment with the historical operator. And what we have noticed is not being too prescriptive in technical choices with operator. So to allow them working the way they are used to in connecting different networks and choosing to focus on the level of service. That is our tender. Next steps. So the French version of EasyNet is currently under bid, and construction has to be pursued. The first deployment will begin by the end of fall 2021, and we aim to deploy Nexus 18112 at the end of 2021 in a fire and rescue service, in a major fire and rescue service, and then progressively further to other departments. what is very clear also is that having a single network like Secourir will allow us to bring most of Nexus in any new district where it has to be deployed. And so it will be easier for us to deploy Nexus with an ESNet. So I think I have finished, and perhaps I was too long. We'll be happy to respond to all your questions. As we are under tender, I must apologize, but I won't take any written questions. I will be able to reply at the end of the tender, which has been postponed to the end of May. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michel. Yes, we all certainly understand that you have a tender process ongoing and understand the sensitivities there. I have to say, just listening to your presentation, I found the idea of the virtual PSAP, being able to create that on demand, was quite intriguing. And actually, I love the analogy that you talked about, the box of Smarties. I think it really does give you an idea of what you can do in terms of trying to pull the different calls together, depending on what the nature of them are. We do have some questions coming in, so I will put those to you. And the first one is from Simon from the Dutch police. And his question is, how long does it take to determine the location and then the PSAP to route the call to? And what happens if an agent accepts a call from his application, but the SIP PBX of the related PSAP is not available?
Okay, thank you very much. Question one, about the length of the sending of the communication, because it seems we have a very complex dynamics, and it's really it's quite instantaneous. So really, in the experiment we have made with one major PSAPs and with the historical operator, we haven't noticed any kind of latency, if I'm correct with the English words. The question remains with overseas territories. Or France, for example, the island of La Réunion, which is some 10,000 kilometers away, having the reverse course may be difficult. And so we will study some local hosted alert management systems, and perhaps it will escape to the EasyNet model. Second question about what happens if the IPBX fail. So this is a very good question. I'm sorry to say this very this platitude, because the first model, when I came as a managing director, the IPBX was hosted on the cloud, on the national cloud. So should the cloud be fail, so I think you won't be able to communicate by phone with the firemen. That was the issue. And it depends to our colleague of the Dutch, of the Netherlands, with the KPN issue roughly 2 years ago. So as I said at the beginning of my presentation, there is a culture of resiliency among firemen. So if you ask them, first of all, we have two IPBX in metro cluster technology. So one can replace the other instantaneously in case of crash. So if the IPBX isn't able to work, there is one which is hosted, which is locally hosted, which will relay. And this culture of resiliency, every time I visit an IT room in an FRS, is very widespread. So I mean some FRS have implement real bunkers, and so I'm not very afraid about it. And there is a third level of response. So first of all, there are two IPBX. Secondly, they are correctly hosted, and third level, if the IPBX doesn't work, another PSAPs will be able to answer the emergency call and will be able to send means or to send the information necessary to send another vehicles.
Okay, that's great. It's a very extensive answer. Thank you very much. We have time. We'll take. This is quite interesting. So we'll take, and we have, I think, about 6 questions coming through. But I will. Let's see. Question 2 from Canada. Maybe we have time for 2 more. In terms of procurement, is France adapting a single vendor ecosystem for each of the phone system, the SBC, and the CAD system? So I guess that means like in a nationwide way. 1 vendor for the phone system, 1 for the SBC, and 1 for the CAD.
I mean, there will be 1 tender for all the components, for the building of the networks and for the running of the networks. There will be 1 single vendor. I was thinking there was another question, Freddy, as you know well, the French emergency system, from an institutional point of view, is that we are under discussion with the Ministry of Health and with my colleague, the digital agency for health in France, and also we have discussed our tenders with the police departments to share these EasyNet with other forces, and it will be possible. And will be possible as well. But what we have, but perhaps in the future, there will be several EasyNet, each for 1 for the Ministry of Health, 1 for the Ministry of the Interior, 1 for the firemen. But the choice we have made in the agency and with the Ministry of the Interior is to outsource it first of all, and to outsource it in a global approach, which entails building and the running and safely running so I won't have only 1 responsible in front of me should any anomaly happen.
Okay, thank you. We're going to leave it there. I know that there's another couple of questions from Jean-Michel and from Irache, but we're a little bit over time on this session. But Michel, thank you very much. What we'll do is we'll try and take those questions, perhaps follow up with you afterwards. Okay, so our next speaker in this event is Sarin Vasilka. Sarin is the Deputy Director of the Special Telecommunications Service, STS, in Romania, and he's going to talk about next generation 112 implementation in Romania. Sarin, the floor is yours, please. Thank you.
Thank you kindly for the introduction, Freddy. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to share with you today the Romanian next generation 112 implementation. On behalf of the STS, the webinar is attended as panelists by Colonel Daniel Rață and I. My name is Sarin Vasilka, and I am the CEO of the STS. Daniel helped a lot during the rollout of the current 112 system, while also bringing significant contribution toward the configuration and implementation of the next generation network. Dan, if you'd like to say a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Thank you, EENA, for the opportunity to present once more our work on implementing the next generation 112 in Romania.
Now come back to the agenda. We intend to briefly introduce STS to you. Then we will talk shortly about the 112 current architecture, the existing limitation and the issues that led to the need to replace it with the next generation 112 system. We'll address the financing sources, the signing, the signature and duration of the contract, product and services deliverables, and the implementation stages. We also want to present the lesson that we've learned, as well as to share to you our thoughts about the future 112 emergency calls in our view. Some of you probably already know that the STS has been a provider of fixed and mobile communication services, secure services for the Romanian authorities for 50 years. Since 2004, we are the administrator of 112 emergency system, and in 2018, we have implemented the raw alert public warning system based on self-broadcast. Therefore, One could say we are ensuring all areas of the public safety communications as regulated by ETSI. The existing 112 system has been in operation since 2005. Its architecture follows the primary PSAP model on which the STS staff operates, offering call transfer depending on the KZ index to secondary PSAPs operated by first responders. The architecture involves a solid client and server application in each county, the routing of call being made according to the criteria pertaining to the administrative jurisdiction of individual counties. Since 2005, we have had over 300 million incoming calls. The high volume of calls taken in the first years was due to the low degree of understanding the purpose of the emergency number 112. Only from the third quarter of 2018, we actually registered a reversal in the percentage of the emergency calls versus non-urgent calls in the favor of the former category. It took us a long process to increase the awareness on the scope and the role of 112 by public communications campaign on media, in summer and winter resorts, and also in schools. Following a recent research study, I determined with a 95% confidence margin and an error of 3%, the group responsible for generating more than 70% of the abusive calls, and we will target them as soon as possible by media campaigns to reduce the number of abusive calls. The current system benefits from caller location solutions like Cell ID, Sector ID, HTML5, Call 112 application, and AML. I'd like to thank our Finnish partners for supporting us in the development of Call 112 mobile application. Romania is also among the first countries that embraced the calls. The main consideration that led to the urgent need for adopting the next generation 112 system were of a technical, operational, financial, and security nature. From a technical perspective, the current system uses equipment that have been declared by the supplier as end of sales and end of support, which makes any corrective intervention a nightmare. The current system does not interconnect natively with the Tetra system. The dispatcher are using radio terminals for communication with intervention teams. The current system has all the basic functions for call processing, yet lacks the specific command and control and dashboard elements needed to consolidate a global picture of emergency events and a better decision-making process for the first responders. The current system is becoming more and more difficult to maintain, especially for those subs with heavy traffic, as one depicted in the left upper corner for the capital. The Bucharest problem was remedied as a palliative method by replacing the old hardware and software. At the present time, we actually have two versions of 112 systems running, each requiring different spare parts, different training of the operators, and different training of the technical teams. The displayed picture shows a real problem for any executive, but also for the employees. When given an identical job file description and a quite similar salary, the operators have so a different workload within their shifts in subs. And in this architecture, in the current architecture, there is no way to balance the workload between the operators. The quality of service could not be maintained at any such natural or man-made event of significant magnitude, such as tornado, extreme weather conditions, or large fires, nor for road accidents with multiple victims. The waiting queue at the entrance in 112 system increased exponentially during such events, as there are only 2 to 4 operators per shift per county to answer the incoming call. The geographical division of responsibility according to the administrative jurisdiction led to calls directed to a neighbor sub instead of the right one for calls initiated from the red spot coverage of the cellular network. From a financial perspective, the difficulties are even higher due to frequent system failures, the need to reinstall solid clients application at secondary sub, the mileage and fuel consumption involved, as well as the organization of intervention teams, which all lead to substantial operational costs. At the same time, due to these frequent failures, the satisfaction of our operator is getting down and staff retention becomes difficult. In terms of security, we have faced situation of flooding by automatic dialers with prepaid SIM cards. The elimination of these trans flooding attacks involves several authorities of the state, such as police, prosecutors, and a judge to catch and to apply penalties to the criminal person. In blue is represented the traffic generated by flooding, while in orange we observe the real emergency cause at a much lower level. As having the privilege to be appointed CEO in 2017, based on a similar evaluation of all drawbacks of the current system, I decided to change the paradigm and choose to completely change 112 architecture. I said that the classic architecture would be replaced with one to use high availability and smart routing mechanisms to ensure the implementation of the concept of business continuity and disaster recovery. Technically, it means reduction also from 41 primary PSAP to 1, composed physically by 3 national centers acting in a resilient configuration. Operationally, it's about avoiding the solid client application and accessing the services from the browser by the call takers, quickly providing technical support and minimizing the cost, while also adding modern services such as video streaming, RTT, and location automation. In addition, establishment of a national network operations center for the entire 112 infrastructure and bringing radical improvements in terms of command and control were also proposed to be implemented. The approval ceremony of the financing application took place in 2018, when I signed with the Minister of European Fundings the allocation of 47.6 million euro for developing NG112, the amount being determined by a feasibility study elaborated by the STS. Following the signature of the financing application, within 1 year, we made the acquisition documentation and prepared the competitive procurement by having a public tender. The bidders were represented by 5 international consortia, and in August 2019, the bidder with the best technical and economic solution was awarded the contract. The implementation of the project was foreseen to be accomplished in a period of 3 years. The implementation involves 2 steps, one of installing the central infrastructure within Bucharest, Brașov, and Sibiu, as well as the installation of 3 pilot counties of primary and secondary sub workstations. After testing all the NG112 features, in the second stage, we will carry out the workstation installation on all of the other remaining counties. The incoming 112 calls will be treated as FIFO, first in, first out, at the county, regional, or national level if needed. In this way, we practically upgrade our capacity from taking 2 to 4 simultaneous calls at the county level to 100 simultaneous calls in case of major emergencies. We are trying also to optimize the processes of implementation, to shrink the implementation timeline by reducing the delay of 8 months registered as a result of the pandemic. This would be possible by overlapping the first stage with the second one for a few months. As deliverables, the central infrastructure includes processing equipment, database servers, storages, and networking equipment, as well as application running on virtualization environment with different operating systems. Central applications support all NG112 protocols, such as the one depicted. In addition, at workstation level, the VDI technology is provided as backup, and also hardware phones are installed in every call taker position as contingency means of communication. In the displayed architecture, the novelty elements are marked in green and represent the standard and NG112 protocols. It is an upper primary route, a middle one, and a contingency path for taking incoming call at the bottom of the picture. By comparison, layer by layer, we can see an elevated interface traffic capacity from megabits to gigabits. The increase of our capacity to get simultaneous incoming calls threefold, using SIP trunks instead of traditionally one, as well as multiple switching protocol at layer 2. Basically, the classic E1 trunks remain as the last resort for handling the voice. From level 4 upwards, we are talking about security at the transport and session layer as well as about UTM machines type firewalls. Within the project, it will be delivered an integrated network operations center facility, and the connectivity with Tetra will be at the level of infrastructure to make easier communication from the application with field resources. As an element of novelty, in order to improve the decision-making process in the command and control centers, a business intelligence type product is delivered to display and report the relevant elements to first responders. At the workstation level, the operation mode is much improved, going from 2 streams to 3, displayed from left to right the queues, the current case file, with the possibility to fast replaying of a case and the geographical representation of both location of the incident and the position in real time of the resources of the intervention forces. It is also mentioned that in the project, it is a delivery of CICD that is foreseen to be used in the test, pre-production and production stages, as well as to have warranties of the correctness version of the deploy process. The existing early warning system developed by the STS in the cybersecurity unit will take under the supervision the equipment, servers, and services of the next generation 112. The NG112 will also be subject of penetration tests run by personnel of CERT unit to check for vulnerability before to switch the system in production. Few words about difficulties and lessons learned so far. At the beginning of 2020, a state of emergency was declared by the President as a result of the first wave of the COVID pandemic. As a side effect on the project, it impacted the travel and schedule of orgs for installation teams, and we had to reschedule the project implementation by 8 months. Luckily, the modernization transformation of 112 into next generation 112 found us trained and certified in all of the technologies that make up the set of deliverables. There are aspects related to legal framework we have to do while implementing the project, as changes on introducing SIP trunks to the 112 system, defining the priority of handling SIP calls to 112, mentioning other way to improve the localization, and hopefully to have the legal framework for declaration of identity at the time of achieving prepaid SIM card. The project is fully supported by the stakeholders, and there are assumed and signed documents between us and them. Regarding our vision about how we would dream to treat 112 calls in Europe in the future, we would like to say that we are living in a world of extremes. On one hand, we are able to lend perseverance on Mars, calling to state-of-the-art technologies, but on the other hand, on Earth, for 112 call, we continue calling through long numbers, other subs of the member states. You may know that in EU today, we send alerts about stolen cars, wanted person, toxic products, swine flu, bird flu, but we are not able today to send a 112 case file to any other member state. If a duration of the national 112 call in our system is usually 30 to 60 seconds in a primary sub, for international calls, we spend 60 to 180 minutes, which for an emergency situation, you may agree that is unacceptable. Furthermore, we'd like to have a regulation stipulating a common SLA for intervention forces all over the Europe. Otherwise, major disparities will be maintained between emergency response times in different countries, and in the conditions of globalization and mobility, people with different citizenship located somewhere in Europe will suffer more or less in different countries. I consider that it's necessary to modify the provision of Article 109.6 of the EECC and to create EU obligations to public operators and service providers and a large strategic roadmap, let's say for the next 10, 15 years, for instance, with a regulation similar to the FCC to make obligations to have both horizontal and vertical location requirements, let's say at 50 meters for 95% of cases based on network-based mechanism. I'm speaking about network-based mechanism for localization, and I'm speaking about obligations, not recommendations. The last three ideas are inspired by the military field. We are thinking about joint operation within the same sub by relocating support forces from other member states as needed. We're taking over the sub functionalities from a severely affected member state by another sub located in the EU. The other one refers to having a common operational picture about emergency in Europe. Imagine the statistics we could have had about emergency due to pandemic in Europe if we would have such aggregation of data for reported cases to 112 from each member state. The last one, we think at building as in the military consoles and military dispatch and command and control center, a standardized interface for call takers, an identical set of symbols, layers, and rules for managing 112 calls. This would permit call takers to adapt easily when contributing as support in other member state sub. Ladies and gentlemen, that is what we intended to present to you today. We would be very happy if we have brought to you even a bit of fresh and valuable information to your activities. I think it is high time for all of us to set up a higher level of ambition for what 112 emergency means in Europe, given that the line between the civilian and military emergency is extremely thin and so permeable. Thank you for your attention, and we try to answer as many questions as you put. And for any questions that will not be answered in real time due to time constraints today, we promise you that we'll send to you the answers quickly afterwards the webinar. Thank you very much, Freddie.
Thank you, Sarin. That was a really interesting presentation. I think it shows how Romania really is at the forefront in NG112 deployment in Europe. I was particularly taken by the operational reasons for moving. Sometimes we think of NG112 and the certain benefits related to caller location and routing of calls, but actually things like managing legacy equipment and making the best use of the resources that you have can be much more effective in an NG112 environment. And indeed, Michel covered that a little bit when he talked about some of the rationalization taking place in France. I see we have one question there from Bogdan Goranov.
Goranov from DNS 112 Bulgaria.
Yes.
Does the NG112 is open to internet, or it can be reached just through the special app? Right now, only through the PMEA application that it will be developed in this project, we will have connectivity from the callers to our system using secured internet access.
Could you please display the
I will
next generation one to the deliverables and new features, just for you to show what is vulnerable in terms of IP world.
Okay.
We have to consolidate. If you could see the cursor of my mouse, this interface. So we have to improve the security on this interface in between the public access IP network and SBC, SDS-SBC.
As Mr. Director mentioned earlier, we have a CERT unit. We have professionals that protect the communications that STS provides to all national authorities. So we have a dedicated team that will protect the exposed interfaces for incoming IP calls.
Okay. There's a question from Iracha Gomez from Atos, and it's interesting because I think it relates to what was on your wish list in your last slide in terms of cooperation with other countries. How are you approaching the cross-border collaboration in terms of NG112?
Just looking at this slide, you can see right in the center we have 3 national centers with session border controllers. I believe this is the way that we could connect to a similar system. Of course, it will have to be an NG system as well. But these are for the long run, for the future, as Mr. Director mentioned. There has to be alignment between how the PSAP operate, how they communicate. So
I would say in addition that the system is ready to be connected with other member states. And at the end of the implementation project will be the technical and the interface will be up and running to exchange information with other next generation 112 systems in Europe. That's important. So the system we built today is ready to be interconnected with other next generation networks.
Excellent, thank you, Sarin. And actually, I think we're all very much aware that the European Electronic Communications Code envisages something like this happening in the future. So, you know, let's hope that it happens sooner rather than later for the benefit of citizens, but also for the emergency responders who need to be able to, you know, accept calls from other countries and be able to respond to them in an appropriate way, leading to a successful outcome. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for your presentation, guys. We will now have a coffee break, and then we shall go across the Atlantic then for our presentations from our American colleagues. So I would propose a 15-minute break, returning at just a minute after 3:45, what is that, 3:45, I think. So if you could just set that up on the slide, Kasia, and we shall resume then. So enjoy your coffee break, and we'll be back in about 15 minutes. Thank you.